So this is such an exciting topic for right now because it is evolving so much. And as women, we have the opportunity to empower the next generation of growing female leaders and equip them and encourage them to grow in their own leadership. And so we get to be equipped with tools and skills to help the next generation, younger women, younger girls as well, who want to grow in their leadership. Next is the evolving role of women in business globally. We are in an exciting time, right, where throughout many, many decades, women have been able to grow in leadership, be afforded opportunities in organizations and business to be in leadership roles. And so we're going to talk a lot about what it looks like to be a woman in business today. We're also going to talk about why women's leadership is important. We bring innovation, we bring organizational success, and then also that women bring a lot of strengths to the table. We bring empathy, we bring collaboration, resilience, all these things. So we're going to dive into a lot of these different topics today. We have some exciting things to go through, but I'll pause. Nazria, did you want to translate anything on this slide, or is that good to go from your perspective?
I think it's pretty straightforward, and Hashim has already asked them in the comment box. They're going to ask any question in the comments.
Perfect.
And you can answer it there.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you. All right, next. So growing in leadership in business. What we want to do in today's presentation is we want to give this group practical tips for what it looks like to grow as a woman in business, to grow in leadership with specific tools, and equip you with practical resources that you can leave today's session and feel like I received a lot of tips to walk away and implement in my own life. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about a lot of topics, but we're also going to give a lot of tools, tips, and resources that you guys can implement in your own life. The first is define your business, or define your vision, right? So this is really important as you're growing in your leadership and your business, as you think about what your dreams are and your goals are. Define your vision. Often this can look like writing this on a piece of paper. This can look like journaling it. This can look like talking about it with friends, but you want to clarify your long-term goals and values, right? We all have different visions. We all have different goals in our careers, in our personal life, in our families. And we want to be able to write the vision down and make it clear, and also talk about our long-term goals. So think about that today as you're thinking about growing in your career and business. Write down your vision, right? Do you want to start a company? Do you want to be a part of an organization? Do you want to start your own small business? Do you want to focus on mentoring and equipping younger women and girls and the younger generation, right? So write this down, make it clear, and also write a long list of goals. Next, what's important for growing in leadership and business is seeking continuous learning. So this is really important, and this is exciting because this is what you all get to do with Coursera and all the different amazing programs that you get to be a part of in courses. It's so important to seek continuous learning, and that can look like getting a certification, that can look like taking a class, that can look like a professional development course or a training. But if you hear of something and you're interested in growing, I would encourage all of you to continue to seek additional learning, training. Madeline and I, in our own careers, are constantly taking additional trainings and growing and learning in our fields to bring new levels of expertise and business specialty experience to the table and our teams and our leadership and across organizations. The third is networking. So networking is super, super important, and we're going to talk a lot about this, and we're going to unpack it in today's session, and then also in our next section where we talk about entrepreneurship in the coming weeks. We're going to unpack networking, give you guys tools and practical tips for what this looks like. But in a nutshell, networking is important, right? Because it helps you build relationships. And so these aren't just contacts, right? And bumping into somebody at an event and grabbing their phone number. This is also really building authentic relationships with people in your field, people who have the same interests as you, and getting to know them and expanding your network that you can utilize in your own career. So really, really important. Madeline's going to share a lot on networking in the upcoming slides. Next is personal brand. Type in the chat or react if any of you have heard the word personal brand before. Many of you may have. Yep. Okay. I see a couple in the chat. Awesome. So this is great. So personal brand, right? This is what's your style of leadership in business. In our work, we'll often say personal brand. And this means what's kind of my two-line, statement of who I am, Mackenzie, and my leadership journey in my business. How would I describe myself? What's my brand, right? In my organizational business and leadership work. So it's really important. We're going to talk about personal brand, and then in our next session, we'll actually give you guys the opportunity to kind of think through what your personal brand is based on your interests, your experiences, and things like that. And we're going to try to incorporate some activities in this session and the upcoming session. So I see a lot of comments on personal brand. Awesome. And then next is resilience. So this is important no matter what stage in leadership, business, professionalism, and in your career that you're in. We want to be people of resilience, right? So if we have a setback, if we have a failure in leadership, we want to turn it into a growth opportunity. We want to be growth minded. And this is important. And I love saying how we can turn setbacks, right, into growth opportunities. So don't let a setback discourage you. Don't let a delay discourage you. Say you're applying to your dream job and you still haven't gotten it. Say you're applying to your dream school and you still haven't gotten it. Don't let that discourage you, right? Let that fuel you for success and fuel you for growth opportunities as well. So resilience is so important. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today too, in leadership and in business. Next, confidence and executive presence. Would love for everybody to annotate on the screen or type in the chat if anybody has ever heard the term executive presence. And it's okay if you haven't. Great. I see some thumbs up. I see some yeses in the chat. Amazing. Executive presence. So we're going to talk a little bit about this today, and confidence as well. So many of us have probably heard the word confidence before, right? This is demonstrating self-assurance, right? In our speaking, in our communications, appearing calm, right? Even if we're under pressure. So we want to have this confidence that exudes from us in our leadership, in our business communications, in career interactions, networking, and also executive presence. So executive presence, for anybody who hasn't heard of this before, executive presence is a set of qualities and behaviors that can enable a person to have confidence, enable them to have credibility, enable them to show leadership. And also, this can be in the business, professional environments. And also, some people could describe it as an it factor, right? Where they look at you and they say, wow, this person has so much confidence. This person has so much credibility. The way that they carry themselves, the way that they communicate, they just have a great executive presence. So this is really, really important, right? That this is almost can be even more important. And we're going to talk about this in some upcoming sessions, right? Body language, communications, how we carry ourselves. This all falls under executive presence. And often this this kind of interpersonal communication can often be even more important sometimes than what we're speaking. So our posture, our body language, how we interact with people, especially under pressure, right? If we're nervous in a business presentation, this is really important to maintain our executive presence. So some key aspects of executive presence, feel free to jot these down. Or if one resonates with you, feel free to type it in the chat if there's one that you feel like I'm really good at this, or this is a strength of mine. For the first aspect of executive presence, and I mentioned this a couple of minutes ago, is confidence. So really having that self-assurance, right, in everything we do. Then the next is communication. So really speaking clearly, speaking persuasively, and concisely. And then some people think that communication is just talking, right? What we're saying, what we're presenting. But communication so much can fall under this. It's also our active listening and how we're engaging with others, right? So how are we engaging with people? How are we listening, actively listening, right? If somebody's saying something to us, are we saying, wow, that's a great point. That's really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I resonate with that. We want to be active listeners as women in business, and this goes a long way in communications and is a really important element under executive presence. So when you think of communication, leaving this session today, think about speaking clearly, think about persuasiveness, but also think about the other side of it, which is active listening and engagement with others. The next is credibility. So we want to earn trust, right, of our listeners, of our peers, of our business leaders, of our teammates, especially as women in business and women growing in leadership. We want to earn trust. Trust helps teams be successful. Trust empowers people in their own leadership and can help you accomplish more, right, with shared trust across the team. So credibility, also what falls under this is integrity, right? And also consistency. So we want to be consistent in our leadership actions, in our business actions. This brings credibility, right? So when you think of credibility, think of integrity, think about earning trust, think about consistency. And consistency can look like doing what you say you're going to do. If you say we're going to meet on Friday at 4 p.m., that you're available Friday at 4 p.m., right? And you're not late or you're not canceling. Or if you say you're going to review something, that you review it right on time, right? And not, 3 weeks later. So it's really important to let your actions match and align with your words. So if you say you're going to do something for your team, you want to make sure there's consistency with your words and your actions. The next aspect of executive presence is composure, right? We want to make sure we have a lot of composure in our executive presence, right? So when we're presenting, even if we're nervous, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that today, of how to combat nervousness and how to maintain confidence. But we want to make sure that we have composure. So even if we're nervous, not always letting it dominate, right? Not letting it show, but also appearing to stay poised and resilient, right? Even if we're a little bit nervous, even if we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the presentation or a speaking engagement that we have to do, maintaining composure and staying poised is really important. And next, vision. So this also can fall under executive presence. And we talked about vision on this first slide, but where we said defining the vision, right? Vision is important under executive presence because we want to make sure we have a clear and articulate vision and direction, because this helps other people follow, right? So as leaders, we want to influence people. We want to be encouraging. We want to set the path. We want to pioneer things. And this is important to have a clear vision. When you have a clear vision, it's easy for people to follow and have a clear understanding of where they're going. So vision is important. And then lastly, this is the last one under executive presence, is appearance. And we'll also touch on this with body language and some of this communications aspect, but appearance is important, right? We want to look professional, and everybody has their own style, their way of how they capture professionalism in the work environment. But for women, this means looking, polished, right? Looking professional. If you have business attire, or just how you carry yourself. Professionalism and appearance doesn't always have to be clothes, right? This can be how you're carrying yourself. So think of appearance as body language, right? And how our posture and how we carry ourselves. It's often less about what outfit you want to wear or how you want to dress, but it's more about how you're carrying yourself, right? Do you have good posture? Are your shoulders back? Are you engaged? Are you active listening? And this can really be important in our executive presence and how we come across in our appearance. So executive presence, this is important, right? Because it can help inspire confidence. It can help you have influence as a leader. And it also is important because it affects how you carry yourself, your communications, builds confidence in yourself, right? When you have good confidence, but also it builds confidence in others. And when people believe in you and trust you as a leader, it can make it's easier for them to follow, right? It's easier for teams to have trust in their leader if they have great executive presence and they come across as professional, they have integrity, right? Their actions and their words line up. This all affects how people see you and their ability to follow you as the leader. So I hope that was helpful on executive presence. We talked a little bit about confidence, clarity, credibility, body language. We're going to go into a little bit about this, but body language is so important because this falls under executive presence, right? And this is the first thing people see is our body language, even if you're in a virtual meeting, right? If you're in a video meeting, if you're in an in-person meeting or at a networking event, body language is the first interaction people are seeing of you before you even speak or say something. So body language goes a long way. And this is important because it can really help how people perceive you as, right, as a woman in business and as a leader. Overcoming self-doubt and building confidence. This is important. How many of you have felt nervous before? I'm sure everybody's felt nervous for something, right? Whether it was a class, a test, a speaking engagement, an event, something that you had to do that you maybe didn't feel confident yet with. We've all felt nervous before, right? So overcoming self-doubt is important and trusting yourself. And often when we have good executive presence, this can help us overcome self-doubt and naturally and organically be more confident in what we're doing. So I want to give you all a practical tip for today. And this is thinking about two things. So the first is a power pose. And a power pose, this could be something like standing in the mirror, right? And saying, I'm confident. And with your shoulders back and having good posture and standing up straight, right? And just saying, I feel confident right now, and choosing to feel confident, even if you don't necessarily feel that way. Power poses are really important, and they can help in helping you build confidence. And then the next is elevator pitch. So elevator pitch may or may not be a term you've heard before, but this goes along with the personal brand. And an elevator pitch, and we can share an example of this too at the end of the meeting or in our next entrepreneurship session. But an elevator pitch is a 2-minute pitch that you would give somebody to tell them about yourself, your leadership style, and what you're passionate about, right? So you want to capture 3 elements. You want to capture your passion, right? Your vision, and then also your skill sets. So more of like that technical side. And the elevator pitch kind of is something where you can think about of you're riding in the elevator with somebody and you have about a minute and a half to share who you are, what you're interested in, your vision, your passion, your goals, and your skills. And it's a lot to pack in, right, to a minute statement. And so what's important is this is something that you can practice with friends. Many of us have practiced it with our peers at different leadership events or something like that. But practice if you have 1 minute to share with somebody who you are, your skill sets, your vision, what you want to do with your life in terms of like career or business, how would you say that in a concise way? That would be your elevator pitch. Madeline, anything that you'd like to add about power pose or elevator pitch, just as practical tips for people to walk away with today and think about and do as exercises on their own or with a friend and practice their elevator pitches? Yes, let me try to take you off mute again. Madeline?
Yep, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I think you covered it well, Mackenzie. I think one thing to emphasize, especially around the elevator pitch, is practice definitely makes perfect. So really emphasizing that the more you practice with friends and family members, the easier it will be when you're in that professional environment and you need to do your elevator pitch. So the first time you do it, it may be 2 minutes, it may be, a little rough and not very clear, but the more you practice it, it'll just kind of become almost second nature, so that when you are in those professional environments, you'll know right away what main points you want to touch on. And a lot of that does go back to what is your personal brand, what are your career goals. That will all kind of encompass what is in the elevator pitch.
Love that, Madeline. That's such a good point. Great points. Thank you so much. And so like Madeline said, practice, right? Grab a friend and say, hey, do you have 15 minutes to practice an elevator pitch with me? And right, it might sound silly, but I promise you it's so valuable, because this elevator pitch, this is going to come in handy when Madeline talks about networking later in the presentation, where if you have 1 minute with somebody at an event or on a call or on a quick meeting, how are you going to share about yourself? Right? Make a memorable first impression, make sure that they know who you are and also what sets you apart, right? What's important in the elevator pitch, and if anybody wants to jot these down, is capturing your passion and your vision, right, in 60 seconds. Also, your skills and any technical expertise, especially if you have technical expertise, data expertise, computer expertise. This is really important because that sets you apart as a very unique skill set in your field. And so make sure that if there's a technical skill set, weave that in. And then what makes you unique, right? What sets you apart from 30 other women at an event or on a call? How are you going to make yourself memorable? And then often in the elevator pitch, where we'll talk about this in networking, is kind of persuasively leading for either a follow-up, right? Or exchanging contact info, or saying, hey, let's have a follow-up chat, or how can I support you, or something like that, which leads to kind of making an authentic connection and closing the loop too. So think about those. I know that's a lot of information on executive presence, but it's super exciting, and this is so powerful. And if you have questions at the end, Madeline and I would love to answer them, but would encourage everybody to walk away with think about those of just like, how to make myself feel confident if I feel nervous for something. And that typically can be standing, with your shoulders back, standing up straight, and making yourself feel more confident. And then including terms of that is your 30 to 60 to 90-second summary of who you are, what you're passionate about, What makes you unique? And then what are your skills? What do you bring to the table that somebody is going to walk away and say, wow, I remember Mackenzie. I remember who she is. And she's the person in women, in leadership and business that she does X, X, and X. And I remember that she said she's really good at data, right? So you want to think about what's going to make you memorable. And then as you practice that today, grab a friend and ask them if they have 15 minutes and you guys can exchange your elevator pitches and give each other feedback or say what you're doing great and things like that. All right. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about what skills look like in terms of leading in business and leading in our careers and continuing to grow our leadership skills. So first is core leadership traits. Core leadership traits are vision, integrity, and adaptability. Now, we've talked a little bit about vision today. We've talked about integrity, right? That builds trust. And then adaptability. Adaptability, I cannot tell you how important this is. As a woman in business, as a leader, as somebody growing in leadership, as somebody in your career or entrepreneurship aspects, you want to be adaptable. And adaptable can also be known as flexible, right? So this means that we're agile, we're flexible, we're adaptable. Say somebody has to change something, say the vision changes, say the deliverable changes, right? Say that there's new ideas and there's a need for more innovation, right? How are you going to be adaptable? This is a really, really important trait in today's world where we want to be adaptable as leaders to different environments. This shows that you're a flexible person in leadership and business. This shows that you're agile, right? That you can pivot and you can change and you can adjust easily to things, right? And you're not somebody that's set in stone, right? And you have a hard time adjusting to things, right? Professional, leaders, people who are building teams, people in the marketplace, they look for people who are agile, adaptable, and flexible. So think of those traits as you guys jot down what your core leadership traits are. And then I would encourage you today to make a list of your core traits that you feel like define your leadership and build your leadership. And it can be 3 or 4 things. But this is so important to define your values and the traits that you want to always have in your leadership, because it stays with you no matter if you're on a different team or in a different environment. You want to know this is who I am. This is core to who I am as a leader, as a woman in business. And I want to maintain these traits no matter what environment I'm in, no matter what situation I am in. These are important to me. For me, I'll share an example of some of my core traits. My first core trait is vision. I always want to bring vision to a team. I'm a pioneer, so I always want to help people run further, right, and faster, and help articulate their visions and help them get to where they want to go and achieve their dreams. And so for me, I always want to carry vision, but I also want to help people be able to articulate their vision. Another core trait of mine is charismatic, warm leadership. So I always want to be very warm, kind, empathetic in my leadership. This is really important to me in how I carry myself in person, as how I carry myself on a meeting or in a call. I want to be friendly and warm. I want to be relatable. So I want people to meet Mackenzie and say, I can really relate to her. Wow, she was so friendly. I want to be friendly like that too, right? So think about the traits that you want to have, and make sure that that you jot them down, and you could remember them. You could post them on your mirror. You could post them on your fridge. And then the last one that I would say is important to me is relatable. And I want to be relatable and approachable. So I want somebody to feel like they can approach me. It's not hard to ask me questions or come to me if they need help. I want to be warm in my communication and approachable. So anybody can reach out to me if they have a question or need something. And I don't want to be an intimidating presence, because I believe leaders should be accessible and approachable. Madeline, anything to add of one of your core leadership traits that you'd want to share with the group, or something that's important to you, a characteristic trait? And let me know if I can unmute you.
I just kept myself off mute this time to make it
Perfect.
easy. I think this also is the trait of what we talked about in the previous slide, but I think integrity is really important to me. I want others to view me as someone that is always honest, dependable, that they can count on, especially people on my team that I lead. I want them to feel comfortable telling me if they've made a mistake, or when I say that I'm going to review something, that I'm going to review it on time, and they can count on me, not just as a leader, but also as a person. So if we ever fall into a situation, that, again, someone potentially made a mistake and it could have bigger consequences, that I'm going to take the best approach there, and they can rely on me and trust in me to help them through fixing that mistake. So that's always been something important to me.
Such a great point. Really, really love that. Integrity is so important. Integrity and character. So I really like that. Great. Great point, Madeline. Next, we'll kind of hop into these quickly so we can shift into some of the future slides, because we have a lot of exciting content. But entrepreneurial mindset, right? We could call this a business mindset. We could call this a leadership mindset, but we want to be innovative, and innovative can mean creative, right? Again, being flexible, adaptable. We want to take risks, right? We want to know, okay, what's a risk that's achievable and will help us grow? We want to be resilient. And then we also want to be motivating. Entrepreneurs, business leaders, right? People who are growing in their leaderships, we want to be motivating. And this can look like encouraging others. This can look like helping others articulate their vision. This can look like helping people, but we want to be encouraging and motivating. And this really helps across teams. So having that mindset of, I want to be creative, I want to be motivating, I want to be resilient, this can help you have an entrepreneurial mindset. Next is decision-making and problem solving. We want to bring in our teams, right? When we're decision-making and problem solving, we have noted here, team-oriented. Teams are so important. Madeline and I work across a lot of different teams, right? A lot of what we do is working on different teams, and teamwork is so powerful and it's so important. And so in terms of decision-making and problem solving, we want to talk a little bit about utilizing your team, right? Asking for help, asking for their opinions, asking for their perspective and their feedback as you're decision-making and problem solving, and making sure your team is involved, asking for feedback is really, really important. And then also goals. So I want to go back to goals, because goals are important. They complement vision and establishing your core leadership traits. But take a minute after today and write down some goals that you guys have in leadership development, or in your career, or in entrepreneurship, or in starting a business. What are your goals? It could be, I'm going to write a business plan, right? By December, I'm going to find a mentor. I'm going to help somebody else capture their vision and goals and help them grow. And so write down what they are. And the best goals are achievable. Some people call these SMART goals, which, if anybody's ever heard of this acronym SMART goals, it means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, right, and time bound. So having a time limit on it, or a time goal, right, of, I want to write a business plan by April, or I want to write a business plan by December. This is important. Make sure they're specific and they're clear. Make sure they're achievable, right? So realistic, so relevant, realistic, those can kind of fall under SMART goal aspects. So would encourage everybody to write down some goals, and you can use or look up that SMART acronym, and that can really help as you're writing out your goals. All right. Next, we want to talk about creating impact. So impact is important, right, in business. This can also be known as creating influence, right? Creating followers, creating teams, right? We want to be women of impact, and we want to help people grow in their leadership. We want to help people grow in their business. So the first is be supportive of other women, right? Build supportive networks of your women peers. This can go a long way. And so encourage each other and help each other. Going back to the elevator pitch, find somebody who is an accountability friend, right? Who you can say, I have this idea to start this business, and I would love your perspective on this. I would love your perspective on how to start a business plan. I would love for you to help me write down a few SMART goals with deadlines to hold myself accountable. And I would love for you to help me think of creative business ideas when I don't have a big budget, right? So you can brainstorm with your peers. And now there's so many resources online that's available that you guys can look up business tools, resources, how to start a business, budgets, funding, all those types of things through online research. Mentorship, right? If you're somebody that is, more advanced in your leadership, right? Or you've had some unique opportunities, find somebody to pour into, right? And mentor them and encourage them in their own leadership journey. Understand your leadership styles. We'll talk a little bit about this in a future session when we talk about entrepreneurship, but know your leadership style, right? Your personality, what are your strengths? How do you collaborate? This is really important. And this helps you work with other leaders as well. Decision-making skills, right? So bringing other people to the table, and then also using data. So data, technology, those are really important. They're kind of hot topics, big buzzwords in the business world today. So if you're somebody that can take a data course, take a computer course, take some type of technical course, this can go a long way in implementing into your business, right? It could be learning how to use Excel or QuickBooks or Microsoft tools, right, for tracking things in a business. But think about data and think about how you can get equipped in different data and tech opportunities as well. Next, we want to have emotional intelligence. We want to be self-aware. We want to be empathetic. We want to have great communication. This goes back to that executive presence piece. So in creating impact, right, and influencing others in business and leadership, we want to make sure we're aware of emotional intelligence. We want to make sure we have good communication, confidence, empathy. We're relatable, right, in our business and our leadership. And this helps people trust us. This builds integrity and consistency as well. Delegation and empowerment. So building strong teams is really important. So who are you surrounding yourself with, right? So if I'm working on something, I always have a team around me. So who are the women that you're running with? Who are you leading with? Who are you working with? And build strong teams around you and delegate, right? We're not meant to do it alone. And so find somebody that you can run with, find an accountability friend, find somebody that you want to be on your team to work together and build strong teams. And then lastly is visibility. So if we're in a business environment, we want to we want to have high impact and speak up in meetings, right? We want to have great executive presence. We want to have good communications. And so this is really, really important in terms of visibility and leadership and business. In whatever circumstance this is in, say you're in a classroom learning, right? You want to actively participate. You want to speak up in meetings. And this helps with leading teams, right? And goes back to executive presence. All right, I'm going to pass it to Madeline, and she's going to walk through just some different types of networking and why this is important in business, leadership, and entrepreneurship.
Great. Thank you, Mackenzie. So just in the chat, if anyone wants to just respond, if they are familiar with networking, they've heard this term before, and then also if they're comfortable networking. So is this something that makes you nervous? Do you feel, do you think that networking is a skill of yours or something that you want to refine? So first, are you familiar with networking? And second, how do you feel about networking? Okay, I see some thumbs up. I see, oh, good. I see some people feel good. Okay, good. I'm glad that we're familiar. That's a good first step. So I think one thing that's misunderstood about networking is the difference between formal networking and informal networking. I think often when we think of networking, we think of what falls under formal networking. So attending a conference or a seminar or a presentation such as this, and having that, you know, someone that you haven't encountered, and it's a very formal setting, a very professional setting, and you're very clear with your elevator pitch and what you would like to hear from them, understand from them, and see if there's any way that they can help you. But I want to emphasize that informal networking is also not just a form of networking, but also a very, very helpful part of networking. I have found that I have had more success through informal networking than sometimes the more formal routes. And really, informal networking, I like to push is just conversations with individuals, and individuals that may be in professional positions that you want to be in one day, or are individuals that can potentially help you on your career journey. I know some people in the chat have asked about, you know, they're interested in starting a small business. You know, how do you get help if you don't have money for the small business? Through networking, you could potentially find investors, or you can find resources to potentially help you with those small businesses. And then online networking, that can be through formal or informal networking. But just want to emphasize that sometimes even just going to lunch with someone that, again, is either in your position that you're interested in or could help you is networking. And sometimes networking doesn't have to feel like networking. Like I said, sometimes some of my most successful networking opportunities have been when I wasn't even trying to network. I was just asking people about their experience, asking about what they do for a living. So networking is important. Obviously, career advancements, it opens the doors. It's an exchange of information, skills, experiences. It can potentially lead to opportunities for job referrals and promotions. But one thing I also do want to emphasize here is that if you don't receive a job referral or promotion right after the networking experience, that doesn't mean that it was unsuccessful. In some circumstances, I have connected with someone 5 years ago, and then when I stay in touch with them and communicate with them, but then 5 years later they reach out and said, hey, I found this position, I think you'd be a great fit for it. So that's the key to, you know, sometimes you're not going to see an immediate response, and that doesn't mean it was unsuccessful. It's just one piece of kind of your broader networking path that you're taking. So it also establishes your presence and increases visibility in your industry. And it really helps you create your leadership identity early. We talked a bit about that. They may ask you, what are your key traits as a leader? It also helps with your elevator pitch and helps you practice that as well. And the practical tip, so brand you in one line or your leadership pitch. This is a perfect opportunity to practice that. We emphasize the importance of practicing your elevator pitch or your leadership pitch, both through formal and informal networking, is a perfect chance to really nail down who you are, what makes you unique, what specific technical skills do you have to bring to the table, so that in those interactions, they really understand what opportunities you may be a good fit for. We can push to the next slide to talk a bit more. So some strategies for networking. Set clear goals. So when reaching out to people, of course, you're using, you're taking people's time. In some cases, they may be very senior, and we want to be respectful of that time. So being clear with them about why you're reaching out and what you're hoping to get from that conversation. And it doesn't need to be, I would like a job, and that's why I'm reaching out. The goal can be as simple as, hey, I am very interested in the work that you do. I would love some of your advice on how to be in a position that you're in, or if you have any advice for someone like me in my position. Just make it clear to them why you're reaching out and what you're hoping to accomplish through this interaction. Be genuine, build relationships and not just contacts. People don't like to feel like they're being used. For example, I do a bit of recruiting at my university for Deloitte, and some of the best interactions I have with people are individuals that just ask me about myself and ask me about what do I do at Deloitte and why do I like Deloitte. The people that come to me and just say, can you give me a job referral, or here's my resume, can you give me a job? That just makes me feel like I'm being used, and they don't actually are interested in talking to me. They just want to work for my company. So make sure that you want to build a relationship, take interest in them, ask them about themselves, ask them what they want to do outside of the work. Oh, I'm sorry too. I just saw I can speak very quickly, so thank you for flagging that. I will slow down a little bit. And then always follow up with points of contact. So say, hey, here is my CV or my resume. On your CV, it should always have your email or your phone number, and say, I would really like to stay in touch. And like I said, keep that relationship going, because you never know 2 or 3 years down the road if an opportunity presents itself that you might be a good fit for. They will reach out. So once again, focusing on a relationship. Think about your friendships. You don't interact with them just once and then never speak to them again. You continue to follow up with your friends. You continue to text them or call them or go out to lunch. Treat it like that relationship. You follow up with them in a couple, say, maybe even 1 or 2 times a year. You just reach out and say, hey, I hope things are going well with you. If you have time to connect in the future, I would love to connect again and hear how you're doing. So they once again feel like they have that relationship piece. And then etiquette as a whole. So always listen more than you speak. Once again, you are taking their time, and they're there to provide you advice. They're there to provide you resources. So of course, if they ask you about your experience or why they're reaching out, definitely respond and provide your elevator pitch or some of your leadership qualities. But the time is really for you to engage with them. So make sure that you are listening more than you speak. Show genuine interest in the other person. I think this one is easy, I think, for a lot of people. Is just take interest, ask questions. Once again, don't make them feel like a contact that you're just going through because you would like this opportunity. Value other time and opinions, be respectful and humble. All of this, I think, in general, as women, we're good at. We always show genuine interest, I find. So I think all of these make us, just as women in business, we're strong in networking. Give before you receive, always thank them for their time, and then always offer a way to help or to serve. So even if you're looking for something for them, always leave it open-ended. Say, hey, I really admire the work that you do. If you ever need help or you ever need any input from me, I would love to help you out. People like one, to help others, and then even more so when they feel that you are taking a genuine interest in the work that they do, they want to engage you more. And that's what I tell people a lot too with networking is I think a lot of times it can be intimidating because especially in cases where you don't know these people. But what I also always remind people is individuals like to help other individuals. And especially when it is in areas. So for example, I love my career. I love consulting. I love the company that I work for. So when individuals reach out to me and say, Deloitte is my dream job. I am so amazed that you are in this role. Can you speak to me about how I can be a consultant? Very often I say yes, because one, I enjoy talking about my job because I like it so much. And two, I would love to have other people enjoy the job that I enjoy. So I'm more willing to take that on. So keep that in mind, that people inherently are good people and they want to help out. And if people don't respond, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to help you. Maybe they're just busy. So if you ever don't hear back, you can always follow up maybe one more time, or wait a while and wait a couple months and reach out again. And they may be less busy and may be able to help. I know we're coming up on time, so I'll just quickly with overcoming challenges, navigating shyness or nervousness. I think this is something we all face. I still get nervous before presentations. I get nervous before networking opportunities, but it's that idea of if you act like you're confident, people are going to believe that you're confident. And I think also too, if you're going into these situations, talking about informal versus formal networking, if you think more that this is an informal, I'm just having coffee and I want to see where this leads, sometimes that helps with the shyness and the nervousness, versus saying, okay, if I don't get what I need to get from this conversation, then this is going to be a failure. That will maybe not help the mindset as much. Start with small groups or one-on-one meetings. Don't take rejection personally, as I talked about. Just learn from it and move on. And be consistent and make networking organic. Make it a regular habit, similar to your elevator pitch, similar to focusing on your leadership goals. The more you practice them, the easier it gets. And soon you will realize that it doesn't always feel like networking. It's just taking interest in what other people do for a living and how they can potentially help you. Push to the next slide.
Thanks, Madeline.
Yep, and I will pass it back to Mackenzie.
Amazing. So great, and such awesome points for networking. And Madeline, love the enthusiasm, and just I hope that encourages people on the call. It's okay to be nervous, but we're excited to have you guys, implement networking in your life and elevator pitches and the different things we chatted about. And Madeline, feel free to jump in here too if you have any additional things to add here, but we'll just kind of go through these at a high level. But we talked about utilizing networking, right? And this can be online, this can be offline, right? There's different professional platforms, right? Networking platforms, but also this could just be in person. This could also be via email, right? Reaching out to people. Resumes and cover letters. I know we've done a session on resumes. There is so many amazing resources on resumes and cover letters. So take some time and research it, right? Look for some example resumes online, look for resources. And then this goes back to an accountability friend. Reach out to a friend or a mentor or somebody you're learning with in one of your courses and say, hey, can you glance at my resume? And if you're comfortable sharing your resume with them, ask them for feedback, right? Ask them what may be helpful that they add or include. And then also career path planning. So this goes back to your vision, right? And your dreams and your goals, but navigating career path planning, we're going to talk a lot about this in the entrepreneur session, but map out your next 3 to 5 years, right? What are your goals? Where do you want to be this time next year, right? You know, in the month of August next year in 2026, where would you like to be in your career? Do you want to have taken another course? Do you want to be studying at a university? Do you want to understand data? Do you want to have a technical skill set that you don't have and receive a training on it, right? So think about those things. And then continue building your personal brand, right? Visibility in your industry. So whatever industry you're in, you want to make sure your personal brand is utilizing buzzwords, like key things that are up and coming, trends in that area, right? So if you're into engineering, if you're in the medical field, if you're in the business field, Madeline and I are in the business and marketplace field, right? With organizational consulting, with business tips and tools and things like that. So we're constantly understanding, you know, what is innovating right now? What are the new creative things that are up and coming? Like what would be good to learn to equip us and help us with our own personal brand. And then common career mistakes in terms of that. And so I think with this common career mistakes, things that come to mind are just not writing your vision down, right? Not being clear with your goals, not knowing how to articulate a vision. And we talked a lot about this today. So I hope this group feels like they have a really good understanding of how to be set up for success with practical tips for your career and writing things down. But often the biggest step that people miss in the beginning of starting a business or just being successful, right, in their vision and their goals is writing it down and making it clear of this is where I want to be in a year. This is where I want to be in the next 5 years. I want to have this job in the next 2 years. And so that's a common mistake I think I've seen is just people not writing it down or not being clear in their vision. And then people also being scared to network, right? Or being nervous. Madeline talked a lot about that, right? It's okay to be nervous, but networking can open up so many opportunities. Most of the jobs that I've gotten are from word of mouth or opportunities of meeting somebody right at a coffee shop or bumping into somebody. They're not necessarily from these formal things all the time. And while they can be both are equally important, opportunities and different business relationships and opportunities can come about in different ways, formally and informally. So think about networking from that vein too, that even if you're nervous, you know, pressing in and reaching out, because often that opens the door to a lot of opportunities. And a practical tip, and actually before I jump into that, Madeline, anything else you would add of just navigating your career, things you've learned that you would want to share too? Let me know if you're on mute again and I can.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry,
Perfect.
I should mute myself again. No, I think you touched on everything. I'll note too, I think a lot of these bullet points we could have a full presentation on. But I do think the career path planning I can really push because I think thinking about where you want to see yourself 3 to 5 years from now, that can help so much in choosing how to network, in choosing how you want to format your resume and cover letter, thinking about your personal brand, starting with the future and how you want to get there can really flow into all of those other pieces you need when navigating your career. So it doesn't have to be, the plan can continue to change, but just giving it that thought really will flow into everything else, who you engage with, how you make, how you brand yourself. So take time. I think sometimes it's so easy to think about now, what do I want to do now? But thinking to the future will then influence what you want to do now.
Love that. So good. Really, really important. Awesome. So as we kind of close out and go into these next couple slides, the last thing I'll share for a practical tip here is just creating a personal tagline for who you are, right, in your professional career, in your business. Like, I can share an example. I do a lot of leadership development in my work and am really passionate about leadership in the business space. So for me, I would say, I'm Mackenzie, and I equip and empower people with tools and resources to grow in their leadership and help them obtain goals and development opportunities to make them successful. Right, something like that, right? So that's my small tagline, one sentence that would encapsulate my passion and my skills in leadership that I bring to the table of my personal tagline in my professional career. So think about that. We can talk more about that too in a later session, but that it kind of complements your elevator pitch of like, how would you describe yourself in a sentence or two? And how does that relate to your skills? And practical tips, we've shared a lot on these today, but I'll just walk through these super quickly as we close with an activity. And the first is just owning your voice, right? Feeling confident. Speaking like a leader, right? Speaking confident, speaking clearly, being articulate. And offering mentorship and finding mentorship. This can make such a difference in your life. And so in your career and your success, find a mentor if that's something that's available to you, and reach out to them. This could be somebody that's just, a little bit older than you, right? And has life experience, has skills, has the same interests as you. Lead with authenticity and invest in continuous learning. We talked a lot about networking intentionally and how that can really drive opportunities. Leveraging technology. It is so important and just so impactful when we have a technology skill or resource, and we don't always need that, right? You don't need a technology skill, but if there's something that you're interested in, or it can complement your career, or you can learn a different data tool or computer tool, this can help us a lot in the success of building businesses, in our career journeys, being adaptable, and then also just celebrating each other, right? Championing other women, being encouraging, right, of other people and their leadership skills, in their growth, what they're doing in business, and things like that. And we're going to close today. And Madeline, would love for you to call some of these out if you see any in the chat, but feel free to write in the chat just something that inspired you today, something that you're going to take away that resonated. It could just be one thing, but what's kind of the little snippet that you're going to take away today and carry with you in your career or to grow as a leader? This could be confidence. This could be working on body language. This could be executive presence. This could be finding a friend, right, to work on an elevator pitch or resume with. But would love for people to type in the chat if anything resonated, one thing, or inspired them today. Integrity. I see that one, really, really important, which is what Madeline said. I love that. Integrity. Networking. Yep. I think that's such an important one. Just having great networking opportunities, and knowing how to be creative with it, right? It's not one specific way, but being open-minded, being creative and innovative. Amazing. Confidence. Integrity. I love that. Being warm and relatable. Really, really good. Resilience. Business plan. I love that. There's so many great resources online. So if people are interested in business plans, I would encourage you to do would do some research, and we'll chat more about it too. Positive attitude. Thank you all for the encouragement. I'm so glad you enjoyed today's session. Critical thinking.